Big Ten Power Rankings, final regular season edition, right here at the Voice of College Football. Please like the video, share these videos out on social media, subscribe, and hit that bell for the notifications to know when we go live. All right, number 14 is obvious. They're awful. They're terrible. They are your Northwestern Wildcats, 1-11. The season started on a high. They had a nice sightseeing trip out to Ireland, and they picked up a Big Ten Western Division win against Nebraska. So for the first 3 weeks of the season, Northwestern was your number one team in the Big Ten Western Division. Since then, 11 consecutive losses. Going back to 2021, Northwestern has lost 17 of 18 games. They might be the worst team in the Power 5 heading into 2023. Northwestern at number 14 in the Big Ten. Number 13 and significantly better, Rutgers. Still a bad season, though, at 4-8. Started on a high. They won 3 consecutive games to start the season, including a win against Boston College, a team we expected to be decent, so a big win for Rutgers at that point. But they've lost 8 of 9 to conclude the season, including a dismal 37-0 effort against Maryland to conclude 2022. At number 13, Rutgers. Our number 12 team in the Big Ten, Tom Allen's Indiana Hoosiers, a second consecutive awful season. They, like Rutgers, started 3-0. They defeated Western Kentucky in overtime, and then south. They lost all but one game after that, defeated Michigan State, but other than that, all losses for IU football. And their big transfer quarterback from Missouri, Connor Baselick, finished with the worst passer rating in the Big Ten. At number 12, Indiana. At number 11, Nebraska. They miss a bowl game again. Haven't been to one since 2016. The high on the season, it's right now. The season's over, and they've got a new head coach, and he's a capable one in Matt Rule. He had a reclamation project at Temple. He got the job done. He did so at Baylor as well, and now he's got one at Nebraska. So the high on the season, defeat Iowa for the first time in 8 years, and then get a new head coach in Matt Rule. The low for Nebraska this season, losing Scott Frost. That wasn't necessarily the low. It was the finality of a 5-year failure under Scott Frost, and the deplorable job that he did in leading Nebraska football finally came to an end. So at least they moved on from that. Finished up with Mickey Joseph. He has his issues going on right now. And now Matt Rule's in play. Nebraska, another lost season, but finally a new leader in play for 2023. At number 10 in the Big Ten would be Mel Tucker's Michigan State team. They got off to a 2-0 start. Then they reached their pretty much low on the season. They went out to Seattle and got exposed as the number 11 team in the country. That was not earned. It was based on Kenneth Walker Jr. and that 2021 team that went 11-2 and won the Peach Bowl. Michael Penix destroyed them in Seattle. So did the Huskies defense. Michigan State came back, and they ended up losing 4 consecutive games by 81 total points. That was the low on the season. And then they really didn't do much of anything of meaning past that, except the high on the season, you would have to say, for Michigan State was after the tunnel assault that everything was going against them from a environment standpoint, morale standpoint. You would have expected the team to give up on the season, possibly with all the bad pub coming its way. But they rebounded to go on the road and upset Illinois as a pretty big underdog in that game. So that was the high for Michigan State in an otherwise dismal season at 5-7. Number 10 in the Big Ten is Michigan State. At number 9, we go to Wisconsin. The high on the season, well, after a slow start, they went back-to-back against Purdue and Maryland to bring them into contention in the Big Ten Western Division. And the high on the season actually is right now. Luke Fickell, they just picked up one of the best coaches in college football. So Wisconsin, looking forward to 2023, this is the high on the season. We got past 2022, much like Nebraska. We've got a new head coach, and he's a good one. That's the high for Wisconsin this season. The low, firing Paul Chryst. He did a nice job at Wisconsin. Led them to 3 Big Ten championship games, a 72% winning percentage. Paul Chryst did a fine job at Wisconsin, but it was time to move on, upgrade, and look toward a new Big Ten with USC and UCLA as contenders in the conference. All right, at number 9 in the Big Ten this season, and still playing in a bowl game against Oklahoma State, is Wisconsin. At number 8 in the Big Ten, the Big Ten Western Division champs from 2021 that fell to 7-5, and that's Iowa. The high on the season, well, mid-season after a slow start starting at 3-4, they knocked off in pretty dominant fashion Purdue and Wisconsin, then Minnesota in a tight one to take control of the Big Ten Western Division. So despite all those struggles on offense, Iowa had it in their grasp, in their fate, with 1 game remaining. Then came the big low on the season, and that was having Nebraska come into Kinnick Stadium and score the first 24 points of the game. So Iowa loses Nebraska, loses control of the Big Ten Western Division, blows the division on the final day of the season. The highs and lows for Iowa at going 7-5, and now they've got a back-to-back bowl date with Kentucky. They lost to the Wildcats last season, and now they face the Wildcats again in the Music City Bowl. Iowa at number 8 in the Big Ten power rankings here at the Voice of College Football. At number 7, we go to Maryland, finishing at 7-5 in the regular season. Maryland will now go to postseason play in the Duke's Mayo Bowl against NC State. Maryland started the season at 3-0. Great start for the Terps. Then even the loss was respectable and impressive, going to the Big House against one of the best teams in the country, barely losing to Michigan, 34-27. They played well in that game, came back off that game and beat Michigan State by double digits. So Maryland started 4-1. That was the high. The low for the Terps, they lost to Wisconsin and Penn State back-to-back, 53-10. And Maryland showed clearly that despite the upgrade and the progress in the program, they are not ready for Penn State. They are not ready for the upper tier in the Big Ten Eastern Division. Our number 7 team in the Big Ten, Maryland. On to our number 6 team in the Big Ten. It's PJ Fleck's Golden Gophers at 8-4. The high clearly winning their first 4 games in dominant fashion, outscoring 4 dismal opponents 193-24. The downer, well, the Iowa game. They could have possibly won the Big Ten Western Division. They had 2 consecutive red zone possessions where they could have won the game, and they turned it over both times to close out another loss to the Hawkeyes. So Minnesota finishes at 8-4. They've got a postseason trip to New York City in the Pinstripe Bowl against Syracuse. Number 6 in the Big Ten, according to the Voice of College Football, Minnesota. At number 5 in the Big Ten, the champions of the Big Ten Western Division, but without a coach, Purdue. 8-4 regular season, lost to Michigan 43-22 in the Big Ten championship game. The high for Purdue football. Road wins against Minnesota and Illinois to win the division. That's what did it, and winning the Big Ten Western Division for the first time ever. The low, back-to-back humiliating losses to Wisconsin and Iowa. This team was roller coaster. Minnesota, Iowa, Wisconsin, the other contenders, Illinois certainly in the Big Ten Western Division, steady, stable, run game, defense. Purdue, up and down. Up and down all over the place, and certainly now the big low on the season, not those games, not those losses, losing Jeff Brom to Louisville. Where does Purdue football go from here? We shall see. Our number 5 team in the Big Ten has a bowl trip to Orlando in the Citrus Bowl against LSU. It is Purdue. At number 4 in the Big Ten, the surprise team of the Western Division, Brett Bielema's Fighting Illini. 8-4. The high, get this, they beat Wisconsin, Minnesota, and Iowa for the first time since 1983. They had one of the top rushers in all of college football, the number 1 rusher in the Big Ten, and Chase Brown. The lows for Wisconsin, they held the Big Ten Western Division in the palm of their hand, but then they lost to Michigan State, and they also lost to Purdue. Lost both of those games at home. And still then, with other teams losing in the Western Division, they went to the Big House as a huge underdog, and they could have won the game. They led it late 17-16, and Brett Bielema, for all the accolades I give him for doing an outstanding job in Champaign, really blew the last drive of that game. Not going to go into details here. I have otherwise. This is about the Big Ten Power Rankings, but Brett Bielema blew that game, or the chance to put that game away. Illinois blows the division. They're 8-4. They've got a Mississippi State bowl game to play, the Reliaquest against the Bulldogs. I'm looking forward to that one. Our number 4 team in the Big Ten, despite not winning the Big Ten West, Illinois. At number 3 in the Big Ten, clearly, these last 3 spots, boom, boom, boom. They are clear. They're on their own level, and that's Rose Bowl bound Penn State, 10-2. Blown out at Michigan. Clearly beaten in the fourth quarter by Ohio State, but Penn State dusted off everybody else. And James Franklin headed to another New Year's Six bowl game, just like in 2016, 17, and 19. So he's gone to 4 New Year's Six bowl games, and they've treated him pretty well. And he goes back to the Rose Bowl to make amends for a 2016 loss to Sam Darnold and USC. Our number 3 team in the Big Ten is Penn State. At number 2, they've got a chance to redeem themselves in the college football playoff. One of the few teams not to win a conference or division and go to the playoff. They've done it before in 2016. The Ohio State Buckeyes. The high on the season started with Notre Dame winning a big top 5 matchup and then going through the rest of the season in dominant fashion. That's the high. Playing more dominant football than just about anybody in the country for 11 games. The low, the game. The second half of the game. Defensive breakdowns, red zone offensive breakdowns. That was a disappointing, dismal second half effort out of the Buckeyes. But they can make amends. They play mighty Georgia, number 1 Georgia in the college football playoffs in Atlanta. Our number 2 team in the Big Ten, Ohio State. And at number 1, hail to the victors. They are the victors of the Big Ten for a second consecutive season. The champions of the West, Michigan, 13-0. The high, there were highs throughout the season. They went through the season and blasted everybody and were basically in control from start to finish. But, of course, the big low for Ohio State is going to be the big high for Michigan. They won the game in Columbus for the first time in 22 years. Back-to-back Big Ten championships. The title game itself in Indianapolis almost anticlimactic again in defeating Purdue by 3 scores. The low on the season, well, there's not really a low at this point, but it looked like a low at the time. They should have lost to Illinois. They got outplayed by the Illini, and Blake Corum left the game at halftime. And a lot of Michigan fans were not looking forward to going to Columbus without Blake Corum's services. But that was the low temporarily for this team. Now it's on to the college football playoffs and to do some work that they could not complete last season. Go to the playoffs, win a game. TCU's up ahead at the Fiesta Bowl. Our Big Ten power rankings, regular season style right here at the Voice of College Football, look like this. Michigan 1, Ohio State 2, Penn State's at 3, of course. At number 4, Illinois. Purdue, the Big Ten Western Division champions, at 5. 6 is Minnesota. 7, Maryland. Iowa's 8, Wisconsin 9. Number 10 team in the Big Ten, Michigan State. At 11, Nebraska. 12, Indiana. Rutgers at number 13. And by far the worst team in the Big Ten, and maybe all of college football in the Power 5, Northwestern. Leave us your comments down below, and of course, lock it in right here at the Voice of College Football for transfer portal news, analysis. Of course, we've got recruiting with National Signing Day coming up, and bowl previews and everything. If you don't get it here on the main channel, we've got 25 team channels. We are breaking all that down right here at the Voice of College Football.